Okay, hello everyone. My name is Olga Voroninai. I'm director of the Russian and Eurasian Studies program. Welcome to this event sponsored by the Russian and Eurasian Studies and Center for Civic Engagement at Bard College. The event's title is Tatьяна Толстая, Aetherial Worlds, and I must say that for me, introducing Tatьяна Толстая to you today feels surreal. Not only she is Russia's preeminent novelist, essayist, and TV personality, she is also a legend. The person who not merely tells stories, but is a story. Her family is legendary, from the novelist Alexei Tolstoy, related to Leo, who is her paternal grandfather, to her physicist father Nikita Tolstoy, and from her grandfather, poet Natalia Kandievskaya, and maternal grandfather, translator Mikhail Lazinsky, to her son Artemy Lebedev, a notoriously imaginative designer and art scene provocateur. Tolstoy's literary work is legendary. There are several books of short stories and the novel Slings, which transforms the genre of dystopia by taking the reader inside the snow-covered, mice-infested, horrifyingly post-apocalyptic world of semi-eternal semi-humans who know little about Russian history but retain its medieval customs while speaking the language of pre-Petrine Rus. The inventiveness of Tolstoy's vocabulary is legendary even for the literature that claims some of the quirkiest language uses or abusers. Take her ability to construct new realms out of the minutiae of this world. A child's boo-boo, for example, a bit of a family quarrel, a telegram carrier's daily routine, a badly eased-in sleeve, a pot of soup that is overboiling. Or contemplate her discovering that she could write during a 3-month-long period of near blindness that followed eye surgery, the subject of the title story of the book we're celebrating today. When Tolstoy writes, she does so without fear or reproach, calling an idiot, savoring great poetry and paying homage to it, sharing herself's reflections in literature's concave or multifaceted or broken mirrors. All of this results in masterworks that have become and will remain milestones of late Soviet and post-Soviet literary history. Tolstoy's recipes are legendary. Try to bake an apple pie or make borscht without using her advice on the subject generously posted on Facebook, and you will fail. She knows how to do it. In the book she is introducing today, one of the stories is about making aspic. Read it. You will want to eat the goods before you get to the end of the page. Tolstoy's TV appearances are legendary. From 2002 to 2014, she acted as an anchor of a talk show, The School of Scandal. And there was hardly an event of Russia's contemporary life or a person who mattered in its culture that avoided being commented on, made a judgment about, possibly vilified, but also turned into an icon, if only for a day. If those in Russia who do not read are asked about Tolstoy, they would know her. But they should have read Tolstoy honestly. Because when critics compare her to Chekhov, Gogol, or Nabokov, they're doing a disservice to us, the readers. Sometimes we wonder what it would be like to meet the writers of such extraordinary creative power as theirs. But why should we? When we can encounter Tolstoy's own originality, her verbal inventiveness, her spunk. Today you have a chance to do so. Please welcome Tatьяна Толстая to Bard.
Good evening. Olga mentioned the story that opens my collection of stories. It's 2020, and this is the only story that I wrote for this collection in English. I mean, I didn't write it in English. My English is not good enough to dare to write. But it was meant to be written only for the English readers, for some reasons, I don't know, because I told this story several times in Russian, but I didn't want to make a story out of it. Just this episode, yes, it's the episode of my life and very, very important for me. But It doesn't exist in the form of a story. All other stories in the collection, they exist in Russian, and they were chosen and translated in English by my daughter-in-law. So it's a good example of nepotism, how it works. We work together. She's Russian too, but she stays here since, time immemorial, 88 or something. So she's an American person too. And it was a very good, and was and is a very good and very fruitful cooperation. I learned many new words in English, and I will read this story 2020 in English too. And if I mispronounce some words, that's because it's not my native tongue. But anyway, I'll try. So, 2020. My grandfather, Alexei Tolstoy, a famous Russian writer, attended the St. Petersburg Technological Institute in his youth, starting in 1901, thinking he would like to become an engineer. But he never became one. He described it to my father, how difficult it was for him studying there. Here is his professor by the blackboard addressing the students. Let's picture a cigar-like object. And that's it. My young grandpa is in a trance. He's picturing something cigar-like. He sees a cigar. You need to clip the end of it before you can smoke it. Golden cutters carefully trim away the dry brown leaves. What wonderful aroma wafts from quality Havana tobacco. Out of nowhere appears a balloon-shaped brandy snifter full of heavy red-brown cognac, casting golden reflections. Oh, to grasp the glass in your palm, warming it, the undulating golden flickers, the bluish smoke. You inhale it, you tap the cigar to break off the ash. It's dusk, the heavy drapes drawn back. Outside through the window there is a crepuscular early evening of snowy St. Petersburg streets. On snowy St. Petersburg streets. A sleigh pulled by a courser silently whooshes by. Who is rushing and where? To the theater? To a romantic rendezvous? Suddenly, reality interrupts this waking dream. Cheers thunder, the professor erases the blackboard, wiping away formulas interesting and useful to any engineer. See you next time, gentlemen. Grandfather never finished his studies at the institute. He committed himself wholly to literature, becoming famous for, among other things, his historical novels. Writers who knew him personally described his imagination in the later years as clairvoyant. He was able to improvise, creating on the fly the most complicated dialogues, keeping them psychologically astute and peppering them with convincing historical specifics. He saw the past in great detail, every button on a jacket, every wrinkle in a dress. The ability to daydream was passed on to me, although not to the same extent. I didn't start out a writer and had no plans of becoming one. Although I happily swam in imaginary expanses, I had no words to describe them. Then, one fine day, when I was 32 years old, I decided to correct my myopia by undergoing surgery in the famous eye clinic of Professor Fyodorov. This was in 1983, before they used lasers for the procedure as they do now, but instead made corneal incisions by hand with a regular razor blade. The incisions took 3 long months to heal. All this time, while the eyes recuperated, you could see things only poorly, approximately, through tears that constantly streamed like rain on the window pane. And after it was over, one day you would literally wake up with perfect vision, 20/20. But before that happened, you had to sit in complete darkness. Such were the idiosyncrasies of the process that any light caused insufferable eye pain. At first, for 3 or 4 days, the agony was so great that no analgesics, no sleeping pills brought any relief. Then it subsided a bit. Nonetheless, even at dusk, my eyes were ablaze, and the temporary respite of night was interrupted by accidental glances at the stars, their light burning like fiery needles. Finally, it was all I could do to sit at home wearing dark sunglasses, the black drapes closed, living by touch. Not a single word, neither handwritten nor typed, did my eyes take in during that prison sentence. Only music, invisible in its essence, saved me from this existential desert. All that was left of the world was music and pain. Gradually, something unfamiliar began to happen to my mind. The blindness was still near total. I didn't yet dare take off my sunglasses to peer outside, but in my mind's eye, I began to see bright visions from my past. They were not simply visions as before, similar to dreams. No, they were words, phrases, pages of text, plot lines. It was as if someone awoke in my head a second me, one who had been slumbering until now. Visual experiences now came with a narrative. In fact, they were inseparable from it. If the wording wasn't exact, then the imagery it conjured seemed obscured by dust or fog, and only the right words cleared it away. I was I was seeing my childhood, our neighbor who lived on the other side of the fence and whom I had long forgotten. I was 6 when he was 60. Never before could he have been interesting to me. And why him specifically? No matter. Suddenly I saw him, I understood his life, I felt his anxiety and his joy. Suddenly his house, his garden, his beautiful but not so young Zarina of a wife appeared before me, and with these images words emerged, words that could describe them. A plot line materialized and filled up with meaning. Unexpectedly, the subtext and hidden significance of this yet-to-be written story appeared, the eternal metaphor of banishment from paradise. My external eyes were still awaiting the sunrise, while my internal ones were looking around, seeking out details. Here is one, here is another, here is a whole bunch. As soon as I was able to emerge from my room into the dim light of the table lamp, I typed up my first ever short story in great haste. I knew just how to do it, what to write, what not to write. And I understood that what remains unwritten possesses a special kind of power, a certain gravity by absence, similar to a magnetic force that can both attract and repel, a force we can't see, but that is nonetheless there. This heretofore invisible, hidden world was now within my reach. I could enter it at any point, but it had particular doors with keys of sound, with lockpicks of intonation. The doors could be opened with love or with tears. One day, all of a sudden, my sliced-up eyes could see again. My vision returned completely and immediately, 2020, as promised. And that was bliss. And this was bliss. Meanwhile, I found that the second world, having first appeared to me in darkness, was here to stay. It turned out to be a multifaceted underside of so-called reality, a dungeon full of treasure, an ethereal world through the looking glass, a mysterious box with passcodes to all enigmas, an address book with the exact coordinates of those who never existed. I don't know its geography, its mountains, or its seas. It's so vast, it must be limitless. Or perhaps it's not simply one world. Perhaps there are many. They are unpredictable. They can show themselves to you or not. Some days they may not let you inside. Sorry, the doors are locked. We are on holiday. But to the patient and the devoted, they will in the end always yield. The doors will open, and you won't know what you will come across until you enter. So that's my opening little text, and that's how I started writing. Yep, you're welcome.
This story leads us to the discussion of the book, which some of you may have read because it's been up for sale around the country. If you haven't read it, it's outside. You can buy it and read it later. But since this story introduces us to Tatьяна Толстая's writing process, to the beginning of your becoming a writer, my first question has to do with your perceiving yourself a writer then, early in your career, and now when you have published so many books and have been translated into so many languages. What's the difference?
On the one hand, there is no difference at all. I mean, together, it's very difficult to explain this whole world that didn't exist before and then suddenly appeared with all its, dimensions. So it's still there, and it is there to explore it. I just explored more. First, it opened up, and now I know some of these roads and ways and so on. I feel more comfortable with it, and I'm not afraid to explore and so on. And at the beginning, of course, I didn't know how to explore it, but the world is there. Thing is that something happened, and saying I was afraid, it's not true. It's just now I know what to do, where to go, and never mind that it takes maybe a year. One of the short stories that I wrote in the very beginning of this writing career, took a year to write. It's just, this is how it works. It's not a writer's block. You just have to wait patiently. It's like, the train will come. You have to wait. It's not that it's blocked or whatever. You just have to wait. There is a certain, there's a schedule that God knows how it's arranged. So this is it. But it's not that I developed something. It's just, no. But I explored, yeah. Yeah.
You come from such a rich literary background, and in addition to your family background, there is this weight of Russian literature that you study, you adore, you explore, you write about. How does it affect your being a Russian writer in the 21st century?
I know people who also try to write, but they say they're afraid to start writing and showing fruits of their loom to the readers because of these great Russian classic writers. I'm not afraid, because the thing is that there is no competition at all. It's not because they are indefinitely deeper and of more grandeur than I am. No, it doesn't exist. It's a whole different idea. There is no competition between writers. There is your way and your path, only yours. It fits only you. It's like, you make an analysis of blood or whatever. It's yours. You cannot say, oh, you have a lot of ferrum. Give me some. No. So as soon as you know what you are doing, and you know that you are on your way, if it's your way, it's the right way. Whatever comes out of it, God knows something will come out of it. But the large figures should not intimidate you at all. And there is no writer's envy, I would say, because, just gratitude to those who moved further on this wonderful way of understanding and exploring and whatever. I don't know why. I think that writers who envy each other, something is really wrong with them. I don't understand it.
When critics write about you, they often list your name along the names of Russian women writers.
Yeah, they do.
Who began to create after Perestroika, who began to write when all kinds of borders were open. Do you see yourself as part of that group, or do you want to stand outside of the group?
First of all, I started writing without any Perestroika having any impact on me. Being published, yes. I started writing in '83. I remember the month at least when I started doing it, when this world opened. But it was not perestroika yet. In '83, in '83, maybe later in the year, my first story was published. The next one was published in '84 with great difficulties. Perestroika didn't come yet. It came in '85 and then it accelerated. So before '86, I couldn't publish some of my stories that were already written because there was censorship still. A kind of a strong censorship, a very weird one. They were fighting, the authorities were fighting against alcohol consuming. And so
it was the Gorbachev campaign against alcohol.
It's called Gorbachev campaign, but it was not his campaign. It was Ligachev actually campaign because they say, what do we know, that this Ligachev was against drinking. But Gorbachev was in charge. He was not the only one, but all bad things, and good too, were ascribed to Gorbachev's doing. Anyway, they decided not to mention. It's like fighting smoking, in the cinema, on screen, and in books, and so on the TV. On the TV, no one smokes now. Not in the movies, but in the movies only bad guys do, or in the bar, whatever, and then they are killed anyway. So smoke kills, yes, in some way. But normal people, when they gather and discuss something or have the talk show, they don't smoke. And in '60s or in mid-'70s, perhaps even, they did smoke. I remember my father was also kind of a TV person, although he was a professor of physics, but he was often invited to some round tables and whatever, and he did smoke there, and it was okay. And then they just stopped it. Same with alcohol. We won't show the bad examples, so no alcohol in books. And one of my stories was based on the fact that a little boy is in love without understanding that he's in love with a woman next door in some country. It's his country house who is drinking. She's very beautiful, blah, blah. She's drinking the whole day long. He doesn't understand that. And she is telling stories, and he's enchanted by these stories and so on. So the reader understands that she is drinking, and the boy doesn't. He kind of sees that she drinks from some, black bottle, whatever. So a magazine where I brought this story, liked the story, but the editor said, everything is fine, but the woman shouldn't really drink. I said, you understand that it's about it. I just, but let her drink milk. He suggested, no, I won't drink. She won't drink milk. The irony of the whole thing was that he was a well-known alcoholic, but one thing at home, and quite another on the streets, on the paper. But so he rejected this story because of that. But in a couple of months, the minor editors of this magazine, who were friends of mine, they just came to me, and I was going abroad the first time normal people were able to travel abroad. Before I left, they came just to my apartment and said, all these stories, give them to us while you are traveling, we'll publish them. I said, but this and this. They said, it is old news. Now everything changed. And they did publish that, and no one cared, and no one started drinking immediately. No one rushed to the store,
But some time has passed between the end of the '80s and now. Has the literary process changed?
I guess so.
And how does it affect your participation in it? The publication of your work, your appearance on TV, your participation in book fairs. What is different now in Russia from your perspective of a modern, popular, well-known writer?
Each year it's different, or each 5 years perhaps is different. Now we don't have censorship for book publishing. There's a censorship on the TV and maybe on radio, in radio shows, though not complete. But in books, no. And without the censorship, everyone is doing what he or she wants, without looking back or being afraid. But the editors also do what they want. They don't publish you. because you don't bring money. I don't earn much money from my publishing, from being published. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. My books are published, but I cannot compete with writers who write detective stories or something like that, or fictional writers. They don't exist actually. You know, they pretend that they exist, and actually it's a group of writers doing something. Mostly romance and detective stories. That's how they work. And only maybe a couple of serious writers, they can sell their books, but you cannot live by selling it. Talking, meeting people, yes, it brings you more money than actually being published. So you are your own creator, your own literary process. I have my account in Facebook. If they don't close the Facebook soon, yeah, they might. So then we'll all go back to LiveJournal, which is neglected, and their cobweb and whatever. So I create my own literary process. I create my own readers. I have lots of subscribers, and that's what I do. These are people who would buy my book, so this I know. The others try to do something similar.
And how is it different from you being published in the United States, having readers here, hearing their response to your work? Is there any difference?
Some, yes, of course, because I'm not part of American life. If I lived here, and perhaps if I kept my Facebook account or whatever, practically writing every day or every second day, as I do in Russian, then perhaps I would collect some audience, but I don't do that. And if I were doing it, I would perhaps change the way I write, the way I discuss things, and so on, because culture is different, and the expectation is different, and lots of things are different. So I don't know what I would do if it were so. But basically, people who are reading and who are interested in reading, they are similar in each country. They need books, Those who need, say, music or dancing or whatever, they are not here. They are doing something else. I don't know. I am not sure that there is a world community of TV watchers. No, such thing doesn't exist. But readers is different. It's quiet. It is, you decide at what pace you read, what you read. You can reread. You cannot rewatch, practically. Well, you can now, but it makes no sense on the TV. And in book, you move like that. It's a different scanning of the text, your head.
As a writer, you wear many hats, and we discussed that on the way here. Your hat of a college professor who came to the United States from Russia in the 1980s, who taught creative writing at an American university.
I did.
You have a lot of stories to share.
Oh, sure.
Could you please tell us how it is being a Russian writer coming to this country and teaching American students how to write?
It was very difficult. My English was not good enough. The only thing that worked, several things worked. One thing that, it's not that I knew how to write, but I knew how to read, and my students didn't. I had, each semester had 3 groups of 15 people each, and in each group, 1 or 2 students knew how to read. They understand what it's about. They understood, when they saw a metaphor, they understood it. Others never heard about metaphors, seemed to never have read books, not on their own, not with the help of someone, in order to understand what is it, a process of reading. They treated texts as if they were instructions, what to do. you know. And it was very difficult to break that habit of reading it as a direct instruction. For example, there were students that said that they couldn't memorize some events in a 2-page story, a 3-page story, because they read and they didn't, they didn't realize that each sentence of a very good story, and I gave them all very good stories, classic writers, each sentence is important, it means something. It's written in order to, and so on. They thought they were going to become writers, and still, I don't mean the simple people who are not going to become writers. They may just glance at a text and push it aside. But these people came to understand what it is writing, and they couldn't read. They didn't want to read stories written by others. We could take a sentence or 2 or 3 and talk about them. What is it? Why it is it? Why this writer starts this story with this word, for example? Is it possible, when you know what this story is about, to start it through a different way, to open it through with the help of a different door? They yawned, they suffered, they didn't know what to do. They wanted to have an instruction and to use this instruction and then to be published, to get published. I often had a question for them, what do you do to get published? One girl said, well, I know, I have to sleep with the editor, but what else? Yeah.
So what did you say?
In some cases, it's enough.
When someone asks you, what do I do to get published?
I don't know. I told them that I have no idea. And maybe after the class, after my classes, they would stop writing, and it will be very good for them and the rest of the mankind. Because publishing is quite a different story, quite a different story. You have to learn different skills. And there are people who can teach doing it. But writing is something else. It's just something else. You don't deal with people. You don't deal with even books or paper, whatever. You wander somewhere and you create worlds out of nowhere, it seems. But you wander in the fields, wild fields, muttering something, and you meet someone who says, this is very good for my publishing business. And so he takes you, catches you, and you work together somehow. That's how the book comes out.
Mm-hmm. What fascinates me in your ability to create worlds is that you can take a tiny little detail, sometimes overlooked by everyone else but you, and turn that detail into a keyhole or a doorway to a new realm. And sometimes that world opens up into a different world, and there is a world behind that. That's why the title of your book is Aetherial Worlds, right? There are so many realities that follow and create this receding distance.
And they exist in reality.
Well, that's my question, because I work with Nabokov, I work on Nabokov, and I know that for him the world consists of, the world is a spiral. It consists of several layers, and one layer is material reality, but another layer is the reality of the beyond, what is there. How can you comment on the metaphysical aspect of your work?
That's quite another story. When I was 17 or 18, I died. I cannot say that I died completely, 100%, because there's no death. That's why, and not for some other reason. I received the wrong shot of medicine, and I had the anaphylactic shock. So it means that your blood turns into clots, and I don't know how to describe it, I don't know the medical terms, or anyway, you stop breathing, your blood pressure goes down to the zero, and it was zero with me, 30 by zero. And this is it. If you are not saved by doctors, then you just pass away. So it happened to me, and I understood. I was interested in medical stuff a little bit. I realized what was going on. It's a severe allergy, to call it that way. It can happen to people who cannot stand nuts or peanuts, especially, whatever, or some kind of insect bites them, like a bee. It may also happen. I knew people who are not with us because of the bee bite. Sting, it's called. Anyway, and during this very short time, like 10 minutes before the doctors rushed in, because I told mother what's going on and how it is cold, and she called doctors and they just came. The hospital was across the street from our house. So in this moment I started moving there, and I saw, and more than so, I realized certain things. It was like the worlds were opening, like the doors were really opening, and I saw that there is no death, it doesn't exist. You move to somewhere else, and there is a tunnel, of course, and each one has his own tunnel, and it looks differently, and you want to go there. You really want to go there because it's freedom, because something very strong, like I don't know, vacuum cleaner, gigantic vacuum cleaner, just sucks you out of this world, and physically you suffer from what happened to you, and if you get out of this body that became disgusting body, like shit, if you get out of it, then hooray, you are somewhere there in the blue or whatever it is. I already saw this river or whatever it is, a canal, and people in white that were standing on that side of the canal. Very old, not metaphor, but forgot the word. Anyway, in all old, trope or whatever. We don't know what it is. It's a real thing. So trope or no trope. I mean, in all religions, there is a river. When people die, they have to cross some river. So it is there. You may see it in different ways, but and people in white, for some reason, that were standing on that side of the river, waiting for me. I don't know their faces, didn't see their faces, but they wanted to greet me. Anyway, and there were a lot of things that I saw in the same moment. It was to describe it. All descriptions are linear, but it happened simultaneously. So it's not possible to describe it the way it happened. So only one after another. Anyway, doctors brought me back, but I already was a different person, and I loved what happened. Since then, I'm not afraid of death at all. I don't want it. I don't want to become old, sick, or die. I don't want it. But I'm not afraid of death just because it doesn't exist. You move somewhere. Unfortunately, you don't stay here. That's what is a pity. You move somewhere else. And what is this else? I don't know. Some other long and interesting existence somewhere. That's it. And I believe that everyone has some connection with these worlds, and through this kind of thing, writing, for example, seeing the world after each and every door of small things. You can get there if you wish. I always thought that material things that surround us, they have little souls. Some are beautiful and interesting, and some are just small, tiny, but still they are alive. Everything is alive.
So that's why in the story called Aspect that I mentioned in my introduction, where you're making parts of carcass, that meat that you buy in the market, into broth, and then you make another pot of broth, you end up with this wonderful metaphysical touch when your protagonist, your alter ego, standing on the balcony of the house, contemplating that pot of aspic, is trying to extinguish a cigarette and
cannot find the spot where it happens, and that there is not there.
Yeah.
Tears end in that wonderful pause. I think it's a story that illustrates your transition from a tiny detail into the vast expanse of the other world, which to me is a magical transformation. But I want to go to a story which is not part of this book, it's a part of another book. It's a story of you driving through the night in an unheated car because the car's heater broke down, and you're telling yourself that you can do it, and you do it.
Yes.
You get home after how many hours of driving?
4.
4 hours.
Oh,
of
more.
driving in the middle of the winter.
Yes, more, because actually the road is regularly 4 hours, takes 4 hours to drive. But because I had to stop and blah, 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 what I did, in between it took me 6.
6 hours.
6 hours in a cold car.
Warming your hands around the McDonald's
Exactly.
cup of coffee,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So do you consider yourself a fearless person in
Yes.
everything that you do? Or do you have any kind of fear of anything? Because when I read your work, I think that this is the most fearless person I have ever encountered on paper and in life. This is incredible.
Well, that's true. I'm not afraid, but maybe I should be afraid of some things. I try not to get in the situation where I would be afraid. I avoid scary situations. But if I find myself in the situation of that kind, well, I think I can manage. But nothing special in this story. If it didn't work, I would stop somewhere and spend the night in the hotel and then call the AAA so that they take my car. The thing is, it was my very, very last day in American college, in this profession, on this on this job, and so on. And the very last day, I said, "Goodbye, America," and America said, "Aha, you want to say goodbye?" Now, how about a cold car? It was a frosty December night, you know, and the front glass was being covered by this thick snow or frost or whatever, really thick, like the finger, yeah. So each 50 miles, I know this road is from Saratoga Springs down to Princeton, and each 50 miles there is, at least 50 miles, there is a rest area where there is McDonald's here, Burger King there, these disgusting little shops with their tepid coffee. And in one McDonald's, they served coffee, I don't know, really, really warm, not hot. And they told them, I know that you were sued for $3 million and whatever, and that you are told by your owners not to serve hot coffee, boiling coffee. But I need boiling, so do it, just boil it here, please. And they put it in the microwave and immediately took it back because they were afraid of the managers. And they said, no, just do it again. I want a boiling one. So again, 2 times, 3 times, the man didn't want to. He wanted me to go away. He didn't want to. And I said, okay. Now I'll return to my car and I'll die there because I explained to you what is going on. But before I die, I'll take a piece of paper and write on it, who are you? Jonathan. Okay, Jonathan from McDonald's, right there, is responsible for my death. How do you like it? And he immediately boiled my coffee. It gave me strength to go for another 50 miles.
But that's American. That's the little puzzle you had with the McDonald's guy. But going back to the serious subject of fear, which I think is very topical, is there anything people who live in Russia are afraid the most now? We're talking about the contemporary country, contemporary society, the now that is lasting, right? That's going on.
As always, you know, you're afraid to go out after dark in large cities like Moscow, St. Petersburg. You're afraid of that. You're afraid of stupidity of those who maintain your house because anything may happen. You're afraid of the fact that no one will help you in case of this and that. But that's part of our life. It's not only the contemporary life. It was always like that, I believe. You are afraid. It's not fear. It's not fear. It's kind of sadness that the people. Well, people are not warm enough. They don't care enough. Your neighbors, they don't understand the beauty of some communal life and helping each other, even in small details. It's not fear. It's just the understanding that you have to rely on yourself. Though people who are really good, and there are plenty of them, they are the relief from this unpleasant, encounters and situations.
You lived in St. Petersburg for a long time, and now you're living in Moscow. What's the difference between the two cities, two lifestyles, your being there and your being here?
St. Petersburg is more calm, more provincial, which is good in a way. Moscow is also provincial, but it's provincial in... So many people are going through Moscow. They come from all the country because Russia is a centralized country. There is Moscow and then less, and then so it goes. It's not decentralized as America is. Moscow is the center. So everyone wants to go there, more opportunities, more jobs, better salaries, better living, and so on. So it becomes provincial because of the province that comes in Moscow. On the other hand, they all become, metropolitan citizens. So it just goes like that. In St. Petersburg, it's more backwater city, but it's so beautiful. I have an apartment there too. Long ago, when it cost nothing, I managed to buy an apartment also in St. Petersburg. So I have two now here, and I go there very often. Just to stay there, to look out of the window. I love it so much. In Moscow, just you live. But in St. Petersburg, you feel the city talks to you. And you really care for the streets and houses. In Moscow, you stopped caring because they destroyed everything that could be destroyed.
So would you call yourself a Moscow writer or a St. Petersburg writer?
Neither nor. Both. There is something in common, and I hope I somehow reflect it. I was publishing. My publisher in Russia wanted me to publish the same collection of stories again and again, and my readers didn't want me to do that because they didn't want to be deceived. They see a new collection and they buy it, and then they open. I read it all. So it was not very fair for them. No, but I tried to make a different composition of these collections, and one of them was Moscow stories, St. Petersburg stories. So something happened in Moscow, something happened in St. Petersburg. If you do that, then some slight difference starts coming out of it. Yeah.
And you also published an essay on St. Petersburg and life in St. Petersburg in that collection, В Питере жить. That became a big bestseller last summer. Right? The book is called To Live in St. Petersburg, and it's a collection of essays by various Russian writers and public intellectuals who comment on their St. Petersburg experience.
But it's an old story. They just wanted to publish it again. Yeah. But then, the first time it was published maybe 20 years ago, so the people who read it then now are reading something else. The new generation comes. So to print the same stories after 20 years, it's okay, because at that time these people were not even born yet. Right. It's so strange, when you look around and you realize that these adults were not born yet. Yesterday. Oh.
In Slings, you turn Moscow that we know into Moscow we do not know. what happens to that major Russian city in the post-apocalyptic novel, which comments on Russia after the explosion, after the blast.
It becomes a village, and I think that at heart Moscow is the village. It was called a village, large village. So in its heart it's a village. That's why it turns into a village back.
So there is snow, there are trees, there
Snow,
are
snow, trees, houses with the Russian stoves inside, which is the center of life. It's something that very difficult to explain and to visualize the Russian stove. It's a kind of, it's not a kamin. What is kamin? Chimney?
Kamin is a fireplace.
Well, fireplace. It's whatever.
Masonry stove is a house made of rock.
But it's not Dutch stove. It's Russian stove. It's a place where you cook food and also where you sleep, on top of the oven or whatever it is. There is an opening, large opening, and huge opening. I would say 3-5 people can sleep there. Depends. And it's warm, always warm in winter. So that's a very special center of the house, and it's a way for village people to survive. So in this story, this stove is the center of the house. All the rest is just poverty and fear.
Poverty and fear. And it's going to be my last question. After that, I will open the floor to your questions. The question is, what is your forecast? What's your prognosis for Moscow, for St. Petersburg, for Russia of today? Is it going to become Slinks-like, or is there hope?
No, it will become Slinks-like, and then it will develop again, and there will be another, another evolution, and then it goes back. So it goes like that. It follows the world in a way, because the world is moving forward. Or is it? I'm not sure, because in this century, the world as we knew it seems to go somewhere backward. But then again, well, it cannot last forever. It's very difficult to say, because I don't know how will the world develop. Russia is a part of the world, so the stupid, bad relations that Russia now has with many countries, including America, is stupid on both sides. No one should do that. I don't know. I understand that Russian authorities may be very unpleasant to deal with, but okay. So they are given to us. What can you do about it? Then find a way to deal with unpleasant people. After all, there are zoos, and unpleasant animals are kept there and loved. I don't know, snakes, or maybe a rhinoceros. It's not a very pleasant animal. But somehow people know how to care about him and to keep it low. So I don't know. I think that this stupid attitude on both sides, it should be somehow, it cannot be stopped, but it can go down. I hope that it's only on the surface they're doing these bad things to each other, that actually there are smart people on both sides, that they understand that we should not quarrel in the way we are quarreling now. We'll see.
Well, on this optimistic note, let us have more questions from the audience, please.
So you mentioned in your in the excerpt or the story that you read, you talked about the weight of like what's absent and how important that can be in a story. And I wonder how you decide what you won't include in a story. How much trust do you place in your reader to understand that this unseen object is still there, though they can't see it? what's the process like to make that important decision?
It's based on feeling. You feel that enough is said. I have to stop here. You should not go into details right here. You could go into details here and here, but not here. Stop. And then something happens, you know. And I have total trust in the reader perhaps for no reason, but I cannot but have a total trust in my reader. So I believe that my reader either understands nothing and so he doesn't read my text, or he understands what I do. So it's written for a person with, you know, everything, brain, soul, or whatever. There is a very interesting thing I noticed about myself. Well, I sit without doing anything and looking nowhere at the wall, and there are no thoughts in my mind, and I have no opinion about this or that, and so on. Then I take a book of some great or good or whatever writer of any origin, Russian or foreign writer, and he's talking about smart things, about great or very subtle feelings. He tells me some stories about people. He suggests some thought or some paradox or whatever, and I understand it, you know, and I grow inside in order to match his level of understanding. Before I opened this book, I had no level at all to talk about. There was nothing there. But as soon as something is offered to me, then I grow and I become on the same level. So you shouldn't be afraid that you write too complicated things so that the readers wouldn't understand it. If you know how to make it readable, then each reader would be able, if he wants to read, to match your level. So we shouldn't write primitive things, thinking that, perhaps someone wouldn't understand it. One would understand. People are much smarter than they seem, because they are not challenged. While they're not challenged, they perhaps don't have anything to think about. As soon as they are challenged, everything is here, you know. Writers are not made of some special stuff. They are same people as everyone. They just, something talks through them. So same with this knowing or feeling where to stop in order to create some significant silence. It will be filled by something that the reader brings and fills it with his own thoughts and whatever. You shouldn't say everything. Yeah.
Just to fill the space until the students chime in. You said that you were not able to support yourself entirely from your writing in Russia. What I'm curious about regarding the Russian publishing business is, of course, it could just be a matter of sales, but I'm wondering, do they at least pay decently and fairly, that is to say, royalties? Or you said it's only the krimis and the kind of mystery novels. So they basically don't offer you much as far as royalties, commission on sales?
No. I think it's different for every writer, but usually it's close to zero. Yes.
So less than 5 or 10%?
It's about 10 or 12%, but the amount of books published is so low, and they don't advertise and they don't push these books. So no publicity. So the author gets something. If the author gets an advance, and after, let's say, 1,000 copies being sold, he starts getting this 5, 10, or even 15%. It's good for him, but he cannot live on that. There are very, very small number of copies published. There was a project in one of the publishing houses. I wanted them to publish a very good book by one writer. And that they hummed and hawed, and they said, if you allow us to put your name on, on this book, recommended by Tatьяна Толстая, then we perhaps will publish that. Let's make a series. So they made a little series of that. 3 or 4 books they published. 3,000 copies, 2,000 copies. In one case, they published 3,000 and they whined that it's too much because they were afraid that they won't get the returns, So what happens to writers who are not recommended by anyone, but they are still good? I really don't know. And I know writers who who told me that when they offered their manuscript to publishers said, yes, we'll publish it, but you have to pay for this, for that. Not get money, but pay for being published. So some writers, they just do that. They publish they publish their books, 100 copies, 200 copies, and so on, and try to sell them. That's a very sad situation. Just recently, this book didn't come out yet, but I was teaching for a couple of it's not even semesters, 2-week courses. We had some kind of school for writers in Russia, 2-week courses, and I had students there for these 2 weeks. The course was writing detective stories. When I had the list of the students who were mine for this seminar, I told them, it was before we started talking, kind of a month or a month and a half in advance, I told them all that when it's time for our seminar, we'll discuss certain things, but you start writing now, because it takes time to write detective stories, and gave them some advances. Now, when this 2-week seminar started, what we did, we discussed all ways of dealing with subjects and heroes and things like that, and blah, 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 blah. It was obvious for everyone that it's not possible to write detective story out of the blue. It's not possible. But they turned out to be so good. They arranged themselves in groups. In one group there was 5 people, in another 11 people, in the third, 3 people. And they started writing together. And the group of 11 people wrote a very readable novel, detective story, kind of a quest, which is no worse than anything that we read when we just pick up from the bookshop. It was on the level of it. And a group of 5 people, all women, they wrote a detective novel. They showed it to the publisher, and the publisher said, yeah, we accept it, but you have to write 5 more because we want, publish in batches. Yeah, that's their practice. And they are writing the second now. The second is written. They're working on the third. And the first one will come out in a week or so.
Did they get an advance at least?
I don't know whether they'll get the advance at all, and they won't earn money. But they are really published. They don't have to pay for that. And it's amazing. I think it is difficult to write a detective novel, even if you are the single author, but to work when you are 5 of them, to work together, to somehow to not to quarrel, to distribute your writer's roles, I think is just great. I think it's great. So I'm proud of them. Suddenly, out of nowhere, and I think, my God, I gave birth to this. They never thought about writing a detective story or 5 detective novels. And here it is, just like that, it's born. There is some, if a person wants to write, wants to be a writer, there's a little flame there, And if it's burning, this flame, it's stubborn, then just if you push the person at the right moment, It starts doing, because they are happy by the fact that here literature comes out of their, from under their hands. And before that, they're all adults. They have their own lives, children and career. But they also wanted to write, and here it is. So sometimes the reward is just this, and not the money. Yeah. That's it.
I'm curious about something. I have friends who live in another country that had a sort of 45-year communist regime, and they grew up. The American authors that they grew up reading were people like Jack London and John Steinbeck, and for them these authors still are very meaningful, and they still like to talk about them. What has happened in Russia to those glorious American writers who were so popular during the Ancien regime?
I would say that these two and some others, the writers from the old days, they are still very popular, and they were translated. That's the point. They were translated, and they were in every house. Jack London, though he's an average writer, right? But he was in every house, and he was loved very, very much by many people. Steinbeck is better as a writer, and Mark Twain is great. He's just great. Faulkner is translated. It's less people read Faulkner because he's a genius, and you don't read. You can't expect the crowd to appreciate genius. But there are other American writers. Some are very, very bad, but still they are. People respect them. Some communist writers, perhaps you never heard about them, but they were published in Russia, and some people still love them. They do. Yeah, Dreiser for some reason is respected. I could never understand that. But now they translate lots of contemporary American writers. I don't know the fate of these writers.
Yeah, I really love the story that you told about, the difficult time when you were recovering from your eye surgery. And it just, it seems it's kind of magical that you sort of came out of that, and I guess your mind kind of opened up in a way that you hadn't experienced it before. That's just so interesting to me. And I'm kind of curious, had you thought about being a writer? I guess maybe it had crossed your mind up to that point, but you hadn't really taken that up until after that.
This experience was really unbelievable. And I think that this staying for whole 3 months in darkness, a real darkness, and not being able to read a single word, it worked like a meditation of a sort. So all the information, all the crap, everyday crap, it was removed from your mind. And this mind opened up, just as they teach when they teach meditation. And they say that's the purpose of it. And I didn't realize that this opening up came to me because of that meditation period, until I read an article about that time, a year or so later, an article that told about a person who suddenly, he was a teacher in school, and suddenly he realized that he got the ability to calculate in his mind, multiply huge numbers by huge numbers and so on. So he started made a show, and he started earning money by showing it like a circus person. And there was an interview with him, why he got this ability, this age, 40 or something. And he told them, I made an eye operation, blah, 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 along my text. So the same thing happened to him. He had these mathematical powers, and so this door opened to him. I had writing powers, it seems, and this door opened to me. Before that, my father said, "Why don't you write? You should write." I didn't feel like writing. Okay, I felt like reading, but this door was shut. I didn't want to write. I didn't feel like writing, and suddenly this door was open. So there are doors. Now that they do the laser operations, you go, up and go, and so you can see in an hour. But back then it was a scary thing. But this is the result. This is the result. If someone has the opportunity to meditate in a similar way without this physical pain, but for 3 months, or maybe something comes out of it. You connect with your hidden abilities, forces, and I don't know, talents. I'm sure everyone has some. So.
You spoke earlier about how, as a writer, you can tap into something that is really intangible to many people, and in a way give it words and give it shape and communicate these different worlds that aren't accessible through any other medium. And what I was wondering is, while you're in your process of writing stories, are you opened up onto things that surprise you? Do you find these truths that sorry, I lost my train of thought, but are you surprised by the things that you discover from your stories? And
yes, I would say yes. I mean, the metaphors, at least, metaphor in wider sense, all kind of these ways of comparing words and meanings and so on. They really, as they open the doors. They are a way of open doors. When you compare this to that, then suddenly you build a bridge. You didn't think that it's possible to go from this point to that other point, but through a metaphor you do go there. And the system of metaphors also works wonderfully, because you build a building where when there was a flat field, let us say. So in the process of writing, while you write, and it just pops up, it comes to you, it does build up some connections out of nowhere, and you're surprised by it. And you choose the right one. Sometimes several pop up at once. You have to choose. Yeah, I am surprised.
I have a question for you about Russianness. I read your collection of your critical work, Pushkin's Children, which was wonderful, by the way.
Thanks.
And, in it, in your review, I think of David Remnick's book, you made kind of a funny remark that a Russian person can't cross a bridge without throwing garbage over the edge, and for this reason, Russians are unconquerable. I was wondering if you could expand on that, or if you still believe it.
Oh, it was a joke, of course. But I know many people in Russia who say that when they cross the bridge, they have the urge to spit from the bridge, or to throw something valuable. For example, the purse with money. It's not necessarily garbage, no. It's just this, this feeling that there's the urge, and they have to retain from it, because the next step is to throw yourself from a bridge.
Thank you.
But yes, I heard it from many people.
I have a suspicion, maybe I'm wrong, that the visionary part of your prose is motivated somehow by a certain mistrust or disgust of the prosaic reality that surrounds you. including the people who throw things from the bridge. Not only. Maybe this was stronger in the early work than currently. But maybe I'm wrong. But in this case, is there a moral or a political mission of literature is there a way in which it can instill hope rather than send us to the ethereal worlds?
Well, the sending to ethereal worlds or just showing up, this famous fresco, Plato and Aristotle, one is holding his finger up and the other is holding his finger down. Plato holding up and Aristotle down. In this case, I'm on Plato's side, though I love Aristotle for what he did. Showing that there is the sky above you is, I think, showing the way to ethereal worlds is a way of bringing hope. The thing is that I don't hate, by no means, people who throw garbage from the bridges. When I see that, when I hear about that, I don't divide people in those who throw garbage and those who fly like angels from this very bridge. I think it's the same person, and the gravity brings each one down, and some other, I don't know, something humanitarian or more than that pulls up. The person goes up and down at the same time, and that's what makes it interesting. Each and every one. Well, maybe not each and every one, but most people, they are different in different contexts, and you have to accept the person in any context and try to show him. Don't forget there is something there. Look at the ceiling. Look at the sky, and that's what is interesting for me. I think that in each garbage there is seeds of some beautiful flowers inside it. Politics is the worst of all, Politics is worst of all in this context. I try to not to deal with it. It's always so practical, so commercial, so all politicians are liars, all of them, 100%, 120%. So it's just not interesting. They get the adrenaline from this. No, I don't trust them like I don't trust the people who, publish the ads, best shoes in the world or best whatever, water in the world. No, not the best.
Who are the short story writers you love?
I don't... it's difficult to say. I love Chekhov. Though his way of approaching the text is at the far end of my approach. And, for me, it's always funny when literary critics in this country, not in our country, compare my stories with Chekhov's stories. It means that they don't know other short story writers. They have nothing in common, just zero. It's a totally different thing, absolutely. Some modern writers, and not necessarily Russian, are closer to me in this respect. Well, I don't read much nowadays because it distracts me from trying to, to turn the stones of reality into something soft like text. But Roald Dahl, the American writer, I love him very much. I read him in Russian. Oh, many. The short story is very different from the other genres. It's some special skills are needed to write the short story. That's what I like a lot. Salinger's short story, I think, are wonderful. That's again about older writers. Yes, they are.
A little bit about sort of the line between.
I cannot hear.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, like, as a writer, how important honing your craft is, as opposed to that sort of like inspiration, that openness and that fearlessness to receive that inspiration that you talk about?
Inspiration versus craftsmanship. Well, without inspiration, I guess you can do nothing. It's the basis of writing, and then the craftsmanship after that comes. So the inspiration is something, may call it interest, you may call it inspiration, you may call it just the desire to do something. Without it, you can do nothing. If you feel this, whatever, this wind of something, then next you have to know how to work with it. And I don't know whether it can be taught, but at least one can pay attention, read other writers, study them, see how they use this craftsmanship. But if you cannot start with this end through craftsmanship, because you will get something, but it will be a Frankenstein. It will be a robot, and it will be a dead text. The difference between good and bad text is just one is alive and another one is dead. There was a novel written and published in this country in early 90s, and then a movie was made after it, The Bridges of Madison County. When it was published, this novel, something unbelievable happened. I talked to American editors. They said, we don't understand why this story, which kind of a trashy story, and everyone, there's lots of stories like that. Why is it so popular? Why people are reading it? What's going on? I got this book, and the story of the author is that he was, as far as I remember, a teacher. He was teaching, and he decided when he stops teaching, he will have all the time in the world, and he'll sit down and write a novel which was already somehow composed by him in his head. So, and this what happened. He didn't expect it to be that popular, but it was enormously popular. I got the book and I read, 10 pages. It was as trashy as they said. So, I mean, just he and she fell in love, blah, blah, not interesting at all. But I didn't read it to the very end. But I think I knew what happened. This man lived, lived and worked, waiting for the moment that he will, when he will be able to put everything aside and write what he always wanted. He loved his future work. He loved this moment. He loved these hours of writing. He loved his heroes. He didn't, construct them in no way. He really was, his inner inspiration or flame or whatever it is, he put it in this text. And the book happened. And the readers felt that. The readers felt this invisible difference between a book constructed in order to be commercially sold and something that was written right from his heart, because there is a difference. And readers, as simple as they are, I saw the woman she was a cashier in some, supermarket or some shop where no one visited. Sold some clothes. She was reading there. They are not allowed to read, but there was no one around. She was reading this Madison County Bridges, because he loved what he was doing. And this is the mystical difference. Yeah. Other 100,000 novels written about the same thing, they are trash, and this one was special.
I was just thinking, when you're planning and thinking about your story, is it like linear, or is it like you were talking about, like life? It's more just like when you envision everything, is it more three-dimensional, or how how do you think about your stories?
It happens differently. Usually it starts with a piece of text that comes to your head, a sentence, kind of like a piece of music or a musical phrase or whatever. You put it down, and then you see whether something grows out of it or not. It's very organic. And very often, nothing comes out of it. You know? Nothing comes out of it. So it was a wrong, the wrong seed, too weak to grow something. And suddenly, it starts growing. It's unpredictable. It's unpredictable.
So you don't like lay out a plan for your, because I've heard
It doesn't work for me. No, it doesn't work for me. You know, it works for some people, yes, but it doesn't work for me. Though it is maybe a good idea to lay out a plan, to start following it, but then to deviate from the road you choose, because the inner qualities of what you write, the inner characteristics, they ask for something else. They don't want this. They take you in some other direction. And many writers know that you start the text believing that you want to write about this thing. No, you want to write about some other thing. Sometimes you feel like the text pre-exists, and your task is only to unveil it. You know, it already exists. You have to uncover it. Okay.
So one last question, I think we'll take there.
I wanted to know,
Oh, louder, a little bit louder.
what led you to write your short story, Heavenly Flame?
No, I can't hear.
Your short story, Heavenly Flame?
Yeah.
I just wanted to know what led you to write it.
What made me write it? Oh, I don't remember. Oh, frankly.
The one in the like provincial village and the man coming with the mushroom.
I don't remember. No, there was these are the man picking up mushrooms is just the detail taken from some real life, and there's certain things in this story, they were taken from real life, but the central idea, I don't remember why it came to me. I really don't. I don't know how it started. I don't keep a diary. I don't put it down. Maybe it's bad, but I cannot. If I tried many times in my life, I tried to keep a diary, but it turns out that if I'm doing this, I cannot do other things. It's just either or. You shouldn't remember all the details, because there will be too much information will interfere with this mystical process of creating something. It's really a strange thing. It is a strange thing. It comes and goes. And maybe 7 years ago, maybe no more, like 8 years ago. Anyway, I started writing. I changed the ways I write. I started writing from the first person. Somehow it occurred to me that when I write about some third persons, I'm not sure that I know what they think, what they do. Why should I write that this one woke up, I don't know, left his house and went somewhere? I don't know whether he did it or not, frankly. And if I write that, I think about something else. There is some different idea, not the plot should be the core of the story. No, it's much more interesting to explore oneself. After all, I know myself a little bit more than others, and it's even more honest to write about what I find inside myself than to invent things about other people who don't exist. So I started writing from the first person, and I like it. doing it this way. Also, did I want to say? Yes, I decided, it's not a decision, but anyway, let's say I decided to write only what really happened, the truth, the whole truth and nothing but truth, but omitting certain things, you know? If someone asks you, how are you? And you really start answering, how are you? It's impossible. So you omit the truth. You say perhaps what really happens to you, but only picking up certain details and omitting the rest of it. So same with writing. You can describe some real situation, something that did happen, but making these voids, omitting, creating voids, and so on. And it's so interesting. It turns out that inside many situations in life, the stories are hidden inside. Say you just leave your house and go to the shop and buy something and listen to what is going on around and return back. If you are lucky, you come back with a story. The way people meet, the way they shop, the way they shout, the way they talk, and so on. Talks on the in the subway or in the trolley bus. So interesting. Stories are already there. You have to pull out the story from this seemingly useless and senseless flow of life. The story is hidden there. You just have to pull it out. And it also makes life much more interesting.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.